Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. This is episode 2 in our series around MTM. And today we're going to be getting into a little bit more detail about how MTM really works. I'm delighted that Simon and Ed are rejoining me. Hi both. How are you doing?
Hi there, Simon. All good here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi both. Nice to talk to you again.
Good. And our promise is we'll try and keep this as simple as possible. We might get drawn into the detail a little bit because, as ever, these scenarios and ways of working have complexity. But the whole point of this was to try and simplify so you can understand more about MTM, methods, time measurement, what it is, what it does, and clearly all the benefits that you can gather from it. So without further ado then, Simon, do you want to give us an overview of the motion categories? Because these are kind of quite fundamental to how the whole MTM operation works.
Yeah, fine. So MTM1 works on essentially the basic motions of reach, grasp, move, position, and release. Essentially, they form part of virtually everything that we ever do. If you think about having to pick up a cup to drink a cup of coffee, we have to reach for it, then we grasp it, then we have to move it to the mouth, potentially position it, and then at some point we have to then put it back onto the table and release it. So MTM will look at each of those movements using the various influencing factors for each of those moves, and then we can use those influencing factors to drive us in the right direction using the rules applied to come up with a code, and that code in turn will have a TMU value, time measurement unit value, and that in turn can give us a time. Okay. Along with the reach, grasp, move, position, and release, we also have other movements of the body. So that would be side steps, turns, walks. And we also have other motions like turn of the wrist, re-grasping, and then things use the use of the eyes as well. So when we put all those combinations together, we can then code virtually any repeatable action and be able to come up with a time value for each of those.
And it's fair to say that to break that down and do that analysis, you can video that process with somebody hopefully doing it the correct way, because why would you want to base it on somebody not, and then kind of recreate that in terms of the reach, the grasp, the move based on you starting and stopping and watching that video. So I suppose the point I'm trying to make is there's not a reliance to have to capture this in real time.
No, absolutely. So the benefit there is, as you say, you can video it. I would always recommend that you video a number of cycles just to ensure that we are got a level of repeatability in there, because the human will sometimes make mistakes. So it just allows us to sort of ignore those if necessary. The beauty there is that you don't have to be watching that person to do it. So ideally, you can have somebody in Newcastle filming the motions and somebody in Plymouth doing the coding if necessary. So it is very good for that point of view that you don't have to send people all around the country to do the analysis and spend lots of time on hotel and travel. And then, yes, the other beauty with the video is that you can slow it down and have a look at the motions in real detail. So a good camera that will allow that in good quality would always be ideal as well.
Brilliant. We've mentioned a couple of times what at the moment probably feels like strange words to people. So MTM1, MTM2, MTM log, MTM UAS. Do you want to just explain to people how that fits in then? So we've got the categories, the physical movements, and then you've got these buckets of codes. How do they work together or not, as the case may be?
Okay. So MTM1 is the lowest form. So that's the most granular, the most detailed. And when you consider we've probably got around about 1,600 different codes that we can use there. So we can cover it. That looks at reaches and grasps in very minute detail. And a lot of the movements are as low as 2 centimeters in distance as well. So it's very, very detailed. That forms the basis of each of the other building blocks that we can work off. Okay. MTM1 is very good for highly repeatable, short cycle methods. So you think about if somebody's having to do a cycle that lasts 15 seconds and they're doing it thousands of times a day, MTM1 will be very good because the minute changes will make a big difference when multiplied up. Okay. MTM1 is also very good for looking at two-handed work and also where the foot may be used as well. So ultimately you can be coding for the left hand, right hand, and for the foot motions as well at the same time. So ultimately that could be 3 different motions all happening at the same time. We then look at MTM2, and what we do there is we've combined a number of the key motions together. So in MTM2, the reach and the grasp are coded together along with the release, and then we have the move and the positioning as a separate code. So essentially, where we had 5 in MTM1, we only have 2 codes, the get and the put, available to us in MTM2. That's very good if you're using slightly longer cycles work. Very good for using for two-handed, and it still takes into consideration the weight, as does MTM1. So very good if you want some detail there, but it is quicker to analyse because, as I say, we are reducing 5 codes down to 2. We then have UAS, or the Universal Analysing System, and that is very good for repeatable work of longer cycle, whereby the individual operator will have a certain level of autonomy as to how that method transpires. So providing the starting point and the ending point are met, the bit that happens in between can happen in any order. So that'd be ideal for, say, longer cycles. Very good for things like logistics, where they're having to pack some boxes because each box may be packed with different items every single time. So we can group each of those together, and that puts the get and the place all in one code. So that's very good for that one. Very quick to analyze that one in comparison to MTM1, probably about 10 times quicker. We do lose a little bit of detail, probably about 10%, so the times could be plus or minus 10% of the equivalent time in MTM1, but the benefit is it is 10 times quicker to analyze. Okay, and that feeds into logistics as well. So if you've got a logistics business where you've got packing workbenches, where you're driving forklift trucks, pushing trolleys down aisles, logistics has got codes there, and that'll help you work out for those as well. And that is a combination of lots of UAS codes to come up with that one.
So something for everybody, every type of organisation, and one of your roles is to help people understand the differences and then to help them select the one that they think is fit for their business.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So Ed, just talk us through how the motion rules remove kind of subjectivity from the time setting and the final output.
It's probably best to explain it within the context of MTM1. So that's what Simon was referring to in terms of it's the most detailed level that you can get to with MTM, and it forms a foundation for all the other code types built from. So it's almost like the foundation building block of all the different methods. All of the codes are built from the films that were recorded back in the 1940s. And those films, once they were being recorded, they had a group of industrial engineers sitting around, and after they recorded them, rewatched the videos and rated the performance of each of those videos. So they made sure that everything was back to it was a different measurement system compared to what we use in the UK, but it's an LMS system of performance rating. They made sure that their times were equivalent to a fair day's work in LMS, so 100% of their performance rating. So it takes away that subjective rating that our engineers will do whilst they're on site doing a time study. So that's one aspect of the subjectivity removed from MTM because it's included in the predetermined time. Then all of the other subjectivity is pretty much taken care of by the level of detail that you go into. So for each of the codes Simon was mentioning in terms of reach, grasp, etc., you'll have to describe each one of those using a data card. So it breaks it down into steps that, as you're analysing, you'd be looking at and saying, what am I watching? What code should I be giving to that motion that I'm seeing? So you break it down, you say, well, number one, what they're doing, are they reaching, are they grasping, etc. So if we assume that they're reaching, and you say, great, I know that they're doing that. How far then is their hand traveling? So you give it a distance class based on how far the arms traveled and the hands traveled. And the next step is to look at what it is that they're reaching to and how it's positioned. So in MTM1, there's 5 different ways an item can be positioned that would affect the timing that you give to it. So is it against something, and is it there all the time? Is it a really easy grasp, an easy reach, because it's always going to be in the same position? If it's a single item where it moves around between sides, and it's still a easy reach to it, it's a bit more difficult than the first one because it's going to have moved and you're going to have to look to see where it is. So it will vary slightly from cycle to cycle. And you break it down like that and you just run through those rules. If you were, so that's sort of reach, there's different rules for the different sort of motions, but they follow a similar pattern of you're looking at how far it is that something is traveling, you're looking at the weight, you're looking at the positioning of it and how tight things are, how loose things are, how easy they are to get, how tricky they are to place. And from that, you're able to build that foundation of, if I've got it in this level of detail, then actually there's no subjectivity because we know that item's travelled 4 centimetres. We know it's against something. It can be nothing else than, in this case, the R4A that we've coded it as.
So it builds kind of ultimate confidence in terms of the robustness of and the heritage of the data and where it's come from, and takes out the subjectivity of page rating, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It takes out that, and it also takes out the subjectivity that you sometimes get around breakpoints within a normal time study of when does one action start, when does it finish. That's all removed from MTM as well. It's all, you already know what you're going to be looking for, and you know when something's, when the hand reaches an object, the reach is finished, the grasp starts. So it takes care of that as well.
Yeah, and again, we shouldn't forget how small and quick some of these movements may be, which is why this type of approach is much better than using a stopwatch when we get down to this level of granularity. And I think we touched in episode 1 about TMUs, so the what would we call it? The output isn't necessarily directly in seconds, so MTM works in TMUs. Do you want to explain that a bit more, and then how we ultimately get to seconds?
Yeah. So with the TMUs, they're a unit that was based at a time that was invented around MTM to allow you to get down to that level of granularity. The most common code that you'd use in MTM, one that gets down to the smallest level of detail, is 2 TMUs. It's a tiny amount of time. So 1 TMU is 0.036 of a second. So hardly anything. It would be something like someone blinking will be 1 TMU. So you can get 27.8 TMUs in a second. You basically use that calculation of how many TMUs have you got divided by 27.8. That's going to be how many seconds that you've got to work with. And we take that, and you'd then use that as you would do any other time to apply contingencies, allowances to get to a standard minute value. So it works up quite easily to a usable value, but you've still got that TMU level of detail behind it that allows you to start to strip things out by fractions of seconds rather than looking at, if it was again a time study, you'd be looking at sort of 6-12 second blocks at your lowest levels of detail, and you won't get much past that, whereas you've got potentially 10, 20, 30 codes in MTM that can be behind that sort of similar level of detail.
Yeah, so just really shows the level of detail that you can get down to. And just remind everybody what TMU stands for.
Time measurement unit, simple as that.
Good. And between yourself and Simon, you've both seen lots of organisations apply MTM, clearly used it yourself in kind of work at Rethink. If we start with you, Ed, have you got any top tips for people in terms of how they apply MTM, maybe some things they should do or some things they should definitely avoid?
I probably use it consistently is one of the key bits for me. So I find if I've not done any for a while, and if I'm switching between the different sort of systems, the MTM systems, then I need to just make sure I'm refreshed and know what I'm doing. I'll generally code with the data card that has all of the descriptions in front of me, but I'll also have the manuals open and by my side. So if I want to check something, I've got that standard that I can go back to and refer to. A lot of the time that will stop me from making any silly mistakes, or if I'm unclear on something, it allows me to justify the code that I'm giving, which is really helpful for me. I also find that it's really good if you can have another person who's not necessarily doing the coding with you, but is available to check the work that you've done and offer a second opinion. So I'll often use Simon. Simon will often come to me with some codes and we'll check other members of the teams. If they've been out doing the coding themselves, then they'll show it to us. We can give them our opinions, and it just makes sure that everything goes back to that sort of that's international standard that we're basing the codes on.
Brilliant. And Simon, from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, the first and probably the key one for me was probably Ed's very last point there, and that's to use your peers to help. So a number of our clients who've got a reasonable number of people that are trained in MTM quite often have groups set up, so they'll where they can assess each other's work, go through common issues and problems, and come up with a common solution within the group of businesses to overcome that. So I suppose collectively then they're all singing from the same song sheet. If you're from a smaller team, as Ed's alluded to, it's quite often just to go to another colleague and just sort of get them to cast their eyes over, because it's quite easy to see things. And in MTM UAS, we particularly use estimating for distances. So just using some common themes and tools and accessories that are within the workplace to help with the estimating of distances is common. So just using things like an A4 piece of paper, which we know we've got sort of it's approximately 20 by 30, will be a very good point of reference when it comes to judging how far hands move with a piece of paper or a notebook or a pen. You know, when you've got these common things that are around, we can use those as a good reference point for distances. So they're certainly a good one to use your colleagues for. Also, common mistake is analysing what the operators do. Okay, we shouldn't be coding that. We should always be coding what the intended method is. And this is something I reiterate always on our training. The intended method is always geared up to ensure that both health and safety and quality assurance are hit. If you think about putting a wheel onto a car, we're actively encouraged to put opposite bolts on, not going around in clockwise or anti-clockwise fashion, because the wheel could go on in the incorrect manner. So making sure that we follow the intended method, because the intended method is the method that we know is going to hit the quality assurance and the health and safety tick boxes. And that means that we're giving them the right amount of time to do the job correctly, not the amount of time that the operator believes he can do it in because he's trying to chase the number.
Good. And I really like the peer review one that you both mentioned. And again, Simon, from your experience, I suppose that the benefit of that is, if I've not been involved in the coding, you should really be able to give me the video and then your analysis, and I should be able to watch that journey play out in the code. So I pick the cup up and I put it down. That should be reflected in that code. So I suppose that's that quality assurance check that gives everybody the confidence in the result.
Absolutely, yes. So whilst we're all trained in the same way, we all receive the same training, quite often, certainly in some circumstances, we see things slightly differently. So it's great that your peers can come along and review it and help and guide your way through, because I say it's always best to be consistent, because it's easier to make any remedial actions later on as well if you're consistent in that. So yeah, it's a good point of reference to be able to help each other out there, and it's something I actively encourage, and we certainly do here at Rethink as well. You know, especially if people have got a situation that they're less familiar with, or particularly if analysis is done by somebody who doesn't use MTM on a regular basis, is a great way of just helping them to make sure their skills are kept in tip-top condition.
Perfect. Well, we'll finish episode 2 there. We'll be back with episode 3, looking at how we use MTM to improve methods. So thank you once again, Simon and Ed, and we will speak in episode 3.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.